and thanks for joining us for this webinar. We'll begin with an acknowledgement of country. So in the spirit of reconciliation, Cengage Australia acknowledges the traditional custodians of the country throughout Australia and their connections to land, sea and community. We pay our respects to their elders past and present and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples today. And just a little bit of housekeeping. This webinar is being recorded and the videos and slides will be sent out next week to everyone who registered. So if you missed something or you have to leave a bit early, don't worry, you'll get everything. If you attend the full webinar, your complimentary copy of the text that you requested when you registered will be sent to you after the book is published. We say that if you do have any questions for our panel, can you please put them in the Q&A and not the chat? Feel free to use the chat for any comments or anything else. There's a link or something you want to share with other people watching the webinar, but please put any questions for the panel in the Q&A because that way we don't sort of get lost in the chatter. And if you do have any further questions at any point, please reach out to us at os.secondary@cengage.com. Now I'll just introduce our panelists. First, we have author and teacher Rashmi Bhagwati. She teaches at a high school in Southeast Brisbane and has been a mathematics educator for over 20 years. She's been involved in external exam marking and assessment processes and was a panelist for Mathematics A, Senior General Mathematics. She also wrote topic tests for the Nelson Senior Maths Essential Mathematics and for both Queensland and WA series. Also tonight we have our series editor, Robert Yen. He taught at Hurlstone Agricultural High School in Sydney and he works for Cengage as our mathematics publisher. Over to you, Robert.
Okay, thanks, Jess, and welcome everybody. Rashmi and I are going to lead you in the next hour or so through the Australian curriculum, the latest version that was published recently, version 9. And then we'll also have a look at a new series that we've developed for Queensland, Nelson Maths years 7 to 10, and how it covers the new Australian curriculum. And if you have any questions, just make sure you type them in the Q&A box and we'll either answer them straight away or we'll wait till later in this webinar to answer them. Okay, so a bit of an overview, some background about the Australian curriculum. So it's actually been almost 12 years since it was first published in 2010. So version 1 was published for the 4 core subject areas of maths, English, science and history for years P to 10. And then 2012 was when it was first implemented in Australia in the ACT, Queensland and WA. So it was a phased implementation. And then at the end of that year, version 4 came out, which included the Australian curriculum for years 11 to 12 in the same 4 core topics, core subject areas. And then version 6 came out in 2014 with more F to 10 subjects added. And then 2015 was version 8. And then finally, this year, they were all revised and version 9 was published in May. And that came as a result of a review of the Australian curriculum in 2020 and 2021, where CARA refined, realigned and decluttered the curriculum. And then it won't be implemented in Queensland next year. It's due to be implemented in 2024. Okay, next slide is about some differences between the old and the new, and these are the old content strands, and I'll just hand over to Rashmi. Oh, okay. Oh, Rashmi, we can't hear you actually. Try. Okay, maybe unplug your headphone or something and just use.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you now, yeah.
Okay, great, sorry. With the old content strands, there were 3 main strands there. So we had the number and algebra strand, measurement and geometry and statistics and probability. There were sub-strands within each of those. So number and algebra is broken down into number and place value, fractions and decimals, real numbers, money, financial mathematics, and then you had patterns in algebra and linear and nonlinear relationships under that algebra heading there. Measurement and geometry was broken down into using units of measurement. We then had the shape, the geometric reasoning, location and transformations, and Pythagoras and trigonometry. And under the strand of statistics and probability, we had the sub-strands of chance and then data representation and interpretation. With the new syllabus, the content strands, which could be considered as the nouns, have gone from 3 broad strands to 6 smaller strands. One of the main obvious differences is geometry has now been renamed as space, and within each of those 6 smaller strands, so it's now broken up into number, algebra, measurement, space, statistics, and probability. There are no sub-strands. The proficiencies, which could be considered as the verbs, are embedded within the content descriptions, so they don't actually sit as separate strands. And the proficiencies include understanding, fluency, reasoning, and problem solving. And you're going to see them through the content descriptors and the elaborations with those content descriptors. General capabilities that are within that curriculum still include literacy, numeracy, critical and creative thinking, digital literacy, which was previously called ICT capabilities, ethical understanding, and under the math banner, they no longer explicitly mention personal and social capabilities or intercultural understanding. The cross-curriculum priorities, we've got Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander histories and culture. There's Asia and Australia's engagement with Asia, and sustainability. So this is a small snippet of what the curriculum will look like, the document. So under each year level, so this one looks at algebra for year 7, the strand is algebra. You have content descriptions as well as elaborations. Content descriptions basically list the mandatory content that is to be learned. The elaborations, on the other hand, provide suggestions of ways that you can teach that content description. And they tend to connect those content descriptions to general capabilities and cross-curriculum priorities. Those elaborations are optional, and they're a way of implementing and teaching that specific description. So with each content description, there's a specific code. The code will start with AC9, and that actually stands for the Australian Curriculum version 9. The next part of it looks at the year level. So M7, and this one here actually stands for Mathematics Year 7. You then have the strand, so A is algebra, and then the number at the end looks at what number that content description is in that sequence within the strand. So overview of changes here. So many of the content descriptions have been refined and combined to declutter the curriculum. You've got movement of content to earlier years within year 7 to 9. So for example, circumference of a circle is now introduced in year 7. So it previously used to be done in year 8. It's now within the year 7 measurement unit. Pythagoras' theorem, similar figures and inequalities, has been brought to year 8. You've got quadratic functions and equations in year 9. There's also new topics that have emerged. So for year 10, there is that topic of networks, which will allow them to align to general mathematics of once they get to year 11 and 12. So there's been an introduction of that topic in year 10. And most of the 10A topics provide pathway opportunities into year 11 streams mathematics courses. So the 10A is looking at pathways to year 11 maths methods. And like I said, the networks topic in year 10 allows for the opening up of that concept in year 11 and 12 general mathematics. Algebraic fractions have now also been removed. There's a stronger focus on core knowledge and skills. There's a lot more rigor in primary school maths. So there's emphasis on multiplication, facts and fraction skills. There's a lot more in the new curriculum focus on mathematical modelling and computational thinking and algorithms. There's also a lot more emphasis on conducting statistical investigations and chance experiments or probability experiments. They've looked at moving things and introducing them at the right time in accordance to developmental learning research. So they're bringing things in when kids are ready for them, for that concept to be taught. And then the elaborations are giving more ideas for classroom activities that also include First Nations perspectives. So we have a look at a bit of a breakdown at the specific changes. So in year 6 number, they are still looking at doing integers on a number line and the number plane in all 4 quadrants. So they're still working with prime, composite and square numbers, comparing and ordering fractions, fractions on number lines and equivalent fractions. What has happened is fractions and percentages of a quantity have now moved from year 7 to year 6. Adding and subtracting fractions also is now going to be done at that year 6 level. There's also the decimal work, so adding and subtracting decimals, multiplying and dividing decimals by multiples of powers of 10, and then applications of numbers and problem solving skills. The year 7 number strand, still looking at square numbers and square roots, index notation, prime factors and factor trees. There is a new topic there of expanded notation using powers of 10, as well as appropriate rounding in terms of rounding up or down. Adding and subtracting integers, ratios and ratio problems, fractions, decimals and percentages, looking at simple conversions between them, as well as ordering them, operating with fractions and decimals, and applications of numbers and problem solving skills. Year 8 number, looking at irrational numbers. So we're looking at square root and pi, index laws, positive powers and powers of 0, multiplying and dividing integers, operations with fractions, decimals and percentages, terminating and recurring decimals, and applications of rational numbers and problem solving skills. So not really very much new content in that number strand for year 8. With year 9, the new part is the real number system. So they're actually looking at rational and irrational numbers in a little bit more detail. Year 10 has the new concept of rounding error, and the optional topic, so this would be 10A content, is thirds and fractional indices, opening up pathways to year 11. So the strand of algebra, year 6, looking at number patterns, so whole numbers, fractions and decimals. We've also got now creating and using algorithms to generate number patterns. So that's new. Brackets and order of operations, and then finding unknown values in numerical equations, which is a prelude to algebraic equations. Year 7 algebra, a number of new concepts here. So we've got variables, expressions, formulas, and substitution, creating algebraic expressions and solving linear equations, which is what we are currently doing. The new syllabus also looks at bringing in relationships represented graphically. So we're looking at graphs of change as well as travel graphs. There's also tables of values from a rule and the concept of a function, as well as graphing those tables of values. And then there is the effect of changing the value of a variable in a formula. So what happens when that value changes within a formula. Year 8 algebra. So we've got the simplifying, expanding, and factorizing algebraic expressions. We have solving linear equations, which they're currently doing, as well as graphing linear functions. They are now also looking at solving linear inequalities. So this topic or this concept is from year 10. There's an emphasis on modeling, so linear modeling, and then linking in with the solving linear inequalities, they're graphing a linear function on a number plane and then identifying what values of x would be either less than the solution or greater than the solution. So bringing in that concept of inequalities and values that fit that inequality. And then there is graphing linear equations and inequality using digital tools as well. Year 9 algebra, so still working with the index laws, the zero and the negative indices as well. There is still doing binomial expansion, but with the new curriculum, they will also be looking at factorizing monic quadratic, as well as solving monic quadratic equations algebraically and graphically. So they're still looking at distance, midpoint, gradient, and the linear equation, but now they're also going to be looking at graphing quadratic functions. So that's a shift into the year 9 strand from year 10. And then how changing the values of parameters of simple functions transforms the shape of a parent function or the effects of those changes. And once again, there's an emphasis on linear and quadratic modeling, so linking to real world problems. Year 10 algebra, looking at expanding and factorizing expressions, including indices and the index laws. So still working with linear inequalities and solving them as well as graphing them on the number plane. We're looking at simultaneous linear equations. They're looking at exponential functions and simple exponential equations, so solving them. That's a new part in this syllabus, this curriculum. They're looking at linear, quadratic, and exponential modeling. So looking at growth and decay problems and compound interest. And then a new concept is experimenting and conjecturing with functions and relations using digital tools. So the year 10 curriculum has actually removed equations with algebraic fractions and equations of circles, as well as parallel and perpendicular lines. Optional topics for year 10A, so algebra, include algebraic fractions, equations involving algebraic fractions, factorizing quadratic expressions where the value of A is greater than 1, looking at completing the square, solving quadratic equations, and then new additions to the optional topics are sine and cosine functions and equations, as well as logarithmic functions, inverse of exponential functions, and the log laws.
Okay, I might just give you a chance to catch your breath, Rashmi, and also reflect on what we're up to so far. So we've done We've done all the number content, and now we now have done all the algebra content. You'll notice there's an emphasis now on functions more than relations. I think functions is a new term that's going to be used from year 7 onwards, and also looking at applications of these functions. The new curriculum, the actual topics and content hasn't changed that much, but the way we teach it and the emphasis on modelling and investigation has increased. So I might go through, I'll go through the measurement with you, and you'll notice that with each of these strands, we go through the whole strand from year 6 down to year 10, so that you can see the progression of the concepts. And also we've included year 6 because as maths teachers and as year 7 maths teachers, we end up teaching or reteaching the year 6 content anyway. So there's nothing as much has changed with year 6 measurement, as you can see there. So we've still got area of a rectangle and timetables and basic angle geometry. And then with year 7 measurement, as Rashmi said before, the only new thing is the circumference of a circle that's been moved from year 8. But the other things, areas, volumes, angle geometry there, and also practical problems involving ratios. And then with year 8 measurement, the big change is that Pythagoras' theorem's been moved to year 8 from year 9. And we've also introducing world time zones, and also rates and rate problems are now introduced in year 8. So there's quite a lot there in year 8. We've got perimeters and areas of irregular and composite shapes. We've got volume and capacity of a prism. We've got the units of area, volume and capacity conversions, and we've got area of a circle there. Year 9, pretty much the same as what we've had before, except that we are introducing error in measurement and looking at things like absolute, relative, and percentage error, which you might have taught before in senior maths or even in junior maths if you've been teaching for quite a long time. In year 10 measurement, we've got the usual surface area and volume stuff, trigonometry and Pythagoras' theorem, problems in 2D and 3D. We've got angles of elevation and depression and bearings. What is new is we've got the logarithmic scale, but we don't teach them actual logarithms or the log laws. We just teach them what the logarithmic scales are. And I think that might have something to do with the pandemic and how they used to graph the number of cases on logarithmic scales and people didn't understand them. And then we've also got levels of accuracy, so more of the theory behind measurement error. And then we've also got scale and proportion problems. And then the optional topic for year 10 is the average rate of change on a graph, that's probably leading towards calculus, introduction of calculus in year 11. Okay, I'll hand back over to you, Rashmi, now for the space stuff. Just unmute yourself first.
So with year 6 space, there's 2 new concepts in here. They're looking at cross sections of solids at the year 6 level, as well as tessellation. Transformations and the number plane for quadrants and prisms are still there. Year 7 space, they're still looking at different views of solids, as well as the transformations on the number plane. There is a new concept there of polygons. So they're not only classifying triangles and quadrilaterals, they're also now looking at polygons, as well as designing algorithms to sort and classify shapes. Line and rotational symmetry has been removed in version 9 of the curriculum. Year 8 space, there's quite a lot of new content in this one. So they are still working with congruent figures and congruent triangle tests, and they're still looking at the properties of quadrilaterals. But they're also now going to look at similar figures and similar triangle tests, which has come to Year 8 from Year 9, as well as using technology to look at the 3D coordinate system. With this one as well, we're also going to design algorithms to identify congruent and similar figures. Year 9 space, so trigonometry and enlargements, which is work that has been there within Year 9. Once again, the new addition is using algorithms based on geometric constructions and theorems. So there's an emphasis now in using algorithms in order to classify and construct and deduce. Year 10 space, basically all new work. We've got network, polyhedra, Euler's formula, and planar graphs. There's formal geometry proofs for congruent and similar triangles, as well as designing algorithms to solve spatial problems. So this one, I think, ties in quite well with the general mathematics pathways. Optional topics include circle geometry. Year 6 statistics. So still looking at interpreting and comparing data sets and using graphical displays, including side-by-side column graphs. And they're looking at claims in the media, statistical claims. Most of the year levels, there will be an emphasis on statistical investigation. So you'll see that new addition there repeated in nearly all of those year level statistics strands. So Year 7, mean, median, mode, and range, stem and leaf plots and dot plots, which they do already, as well as distribution of data. The new parts in Year 7 include the suitability of the measures of central tendency. So when would you look at using the mean? When would you look at using the median or the mode? They're also starting to now look at outliers. So outliers have been brought in from Year 8. They're also looking at shape of distribution, and that statistical investigations is there as well. Year 8, the only new addition here is statistical investigations that involve sampling. So we're looking at ethical and fair methods of sampling. They're still doing all of the work on census and data interpretation, the sampling methods. Year 9 statistics. So they're looking at analysing surveys in the media with an emphasis on sampling methods and bias. They're still going to be doing the work with comparing data sets using centre spread and shape. The new parts here are looking at the effective sampling methods and choice of graphs. So what form of graphical display would be the most appropriate to use based on the data you're working with. So that's for choosing appropriate forms of displays. Year 10 statistics. So they're evaluating statistical reports in the media, looking at bias. They're still doing the work with interquartile range. So it's not explicitly mentioned, but it's linked in the 5-number summaries and box plots, as well as comparing distributions, so the centre spread, the shape, as well as outliers in those displays. Looking at bivariate data and scatter plots, and the direction, the strength, and the form of those scatter plots. And the new additions here include using two-way tables in order to identify relationships between sets of categorical variables, as well as statistical investigations of bivariate data. Optional topics include work with quantiles, percentiles, cumulative frequency, and standard deviation. Year 6 probability, working with probability using fractions, decimals, and percentages. We're looking at the range of probability, so the scales, 0 to 1, 0% to 100%. Looking at working with chance experiments, observed and expected frequencies, repeated trials, and probability simulations. So I think they've moved away from using the word experimental and looking more at using the word observed frequencies and observed probability. Sample space and probability for year 7 and relative frequency. So chance experiments is the new addition, and conducting those chance experiments using either repeated trials as well as digital simulations. Year 8 probability, the main new addition to this one is work with tree diagrams. So that's filtered in from year 9. We're doing it a little bit earlier. Still working with two-way tables and Venn diagrams, as well as complementary events. And then there are those repeated experiments, but this time looking at compound events. Year 9 probability, once again, they're working with the two-step chance experiments, both with and without replacement, which is what they do currently. And they're looking at lists, tables, and tree diagrams in order to gather that information and data. Compound events involving and or events. And there's an emphasis on using probability simulations for both simple and compound events. Year 10 probability, no new content. They're still working with conditional probability and using repeated experiments and simulations for conditional probability. There are optional topics here under this strand that look at multiplication principle of counting, as well as factorial notation, permutations, and combinations.
Okay, thanks, Rashmi. So that's our rundown of the Australian curriculum from years 6 to year 10. If you have any questions, just pop them in the Q&A box. Now, the rest of the time today, we're going to talk to you about Nelson Maths for the Australian curriculum. And as you can see there, Rashmi is one of the authors involved in creating this series for Queensland. So, but before we do that, let's have a look at how maths has changed in the last 10 years or so, and how the Australian curriculum has been written for a 2020s maths classroom. So, and you'll notice from the Australian curriculum, there's more emphasis on investigation, probability simulation, algorithms. So there's more doing of the maths as well as learning of the maths. But unfortunately, where we are in 2022, there is a shortage of maths teachers and more out-of-field teachers teaching maths. So one statistic says that by the end of year 10, 75% of students have not been taught by a teacher, not trained in maths. Also, all around the country, teachers today have heavy admin workloads and less time to plan effective lessons. So teaching life is fairly busy and noisy. As a result, often teachers are just teaching from a teaching program or teaching from the syllabus by dot point and using and teaching a lot of drill rather than more conceptually and trying to foster deep understanding and trying to teach the bigger ideas. So many students today, unfortunately, have only a superficial understanding of maths, not really the deep knowledge or application that students used to have. And also teachers are now expected to cater for all types of student abilities and learning styles and to demonstrate differentiation in the classroom. And then also we've had the impact of technology being involved in education so much, some good, some bad. So we've got the flipped learning and the videos, we've got online learning, and of course we've got the pandemic and remote learning. So we're introducing Nelson Maths, and our motto behind that is to go beyond drill and practice. So Nelson Maths 7 to 10 is a new series for the Australian curriculum, and it supports all teachers and students by focusing on differentiation, and it includes pedagogy that goes beyond theory and exercises. Okay, so what does it have? Well, it has all these features that we surveyed teachers, and these 7 features came out on top. So we made sure that we developed a math series that includes differentiation, clear worked examples, online interactivity, mapped precisely to the curriculum. So we're very strong on that. Easy for students to use. And also for today's students who are often looking at their phones and reading websites rather than books, we made sure that we've chunked our content so there aren't slabs of text, but there's text and there's diagrams and there's pictures, and we highlight the important points. And I'll show you some pages from the series in a minute. And also, it's got to be relevant. The maths has got to be relevant. So we have to include real life applications and examples. So we are providing differentiation to support all types of students, not just the high achieving ones, not just the academic ones. So we've done things like color coded our exercise questions according to ability level. We've explicitly labeled all our problem solving, reasoning, and communicating questions. Now for the differentiation, for the different pathways, we've included optional extension work. We've also included revision of the previous year's topics and also some extension work on next year's topics. We, at the end of each chapter, we provide a Power Plus extension exercise. And for years 9 and 10, we're publishing advanced editions for students heading towards those Year 11 advanced or calculus-based courses, such as methods and specialists. So these editions, they have less revision because they assume the students are learning faster. And there's more harder topics. So they might be learning things ahead of time. So we've published a series that's not too hard for students, but not too easy either. So just to demonstrate this is a table of contents. And you can see we've got Nelson Maths 7, 1 to 12 there, 12 chapters, 12 topics. And those are fairly typical topic areas that you might expect to teach in Year 7. So it hasn't really changed that much with Year 7 and 8. Year 8, the only big change is that Pythagoras' theorem is now covered in Year 8. But everything else there, similar figures is new, and inequalities is new. But again, 12 topics to cover. And then with Year 9, we do have 2 pathways, an advanced pathway that includes more content and teaches the course at a faster rate. So if you look at the 13 chapters or the 13 topics there, they do run in parallel, but for algebra, the advanced book has those binomial expansions and factorization of quadratics. For Pythagoras' theorem, the advanced pathway does include surds as well. So there is actually a lot more new stuff in the advanced books. And then with Year 10, same thing. We've got 12 chapters in each pathway, but you'll notice that in the red, there are some slight differences. So chapter 4, we do go through surds and products and factors again. In chapter 6, we introduce logarithms. In chapter 8, we do further trigonometry. So that's the sine and cosine rules. And then even after chapter 12, we've got 4 more chapters to cover for students who are going on to methods and specialists. So we've got quadratic equations and the parabola, polynomials, functions, and circle geometry. Okay. So it is a new style of math series because it includes the pedagogy. It's written by teachers, for teachers. Yeah, all our authors are teachers. They're not academics, so they know they include things that have worked in the classroom. And we're also supporting those inexperienced teachers and also those non-maths trained teachers. It's not a heavy text. It's got a lot of words or high concept. It's intuitive for teachers to pick up and use. There's strong and explicit curriculum mapping, and there's also classroom investigations and practical activities in every chapter. And it includes rich problems and applications. So here's an example of what I'm talking about, the curriculum mapping. On the left-hand side, we've got the table of contents, but you'll notice there's the curriculum code, the shortened version of a curriculum code next to each one. You'll also notice this is chapter 1 from year 7. So you'll also notice there's extension work. So multiplying and dividing integers is actually year 8 work, but I often will teach that to year 7 because I think they're ready for it. With the curriculum grids, it's got each of those strands there and what chapters are related to those strands in both year 7 and 8. And then we actually spell out at the front of the book, like we actually spell out all the content descriptions from the Australian curriculum and tell you where it's covered, what chapter it's covered in. So we are actually, I suppose, being accountable and letting you know we are covering them. So here is an example of a chapter from year 7. It's chapter 5 and it's called Algebra and Equations. And all chapters start off with an introduction, a chapter outline of what's covered in the chapter, and also a word bank, which is like a chapter glossary. So let me show you this up close a bit more. So for every chapter section that's listed there, so this is Algebra and Equations, we do include the proficiencies, understanding, fluency, problem solving, and reasoning. But we've also added to that communicating because we think that's very important as well. On the right there, you'll notice there's a quiz for the Word Bank 5. So that's just a link that tells you that there is a quiz, an online quiz available to reinforce the ideas in the Word Bank. We have got a new learning platform called Nelson Mindtap, which Amanda will talk about later. But basically, Nelson Mindtap includes all of these extra resources, so videos, interactives, quizzes, as well as worksheets and puzzles, puzzle sheets. And then on the right-hand side, we've got a skill check exercise that tests all the prerequisites knowledge that students need to know for that chapter. Okay, and then, oh yeah, that's what it looks like close up. And then we go straight into the theory. So 5.01 is called the Laws of Arithmetic. And anything that's important is put in one of these summary boxes. And then a worked example looks like this, very clearly set out, not too much padding, I suppose. And it's very practical. So this section talks about how you can use the laws of arithmetic to do some mental calculations. So how you can multiply by a multiple of 10. So there's a lot of numeracy in these chapters. Here is an exercise. Now, what you should notice about the exercise is we also provide the page number where students can find the answer. We also show what example is linked to each question. And we also put in those links to the proficiencies there, U, F, R, and C. And even within the question, like question 1, there is a communicating question because it's talking about what like terms are. And then we've also color coded the questions, and there we have it there. So we've got 3 colors for foundation, standard, and complex. And we also realize that some students may be colorblind. So we've also put shapes to represent each of those ability levels as well. So each question has a color, a shape, and also whether it's whether it's reasoning, communicating, or problem solving. Okay, so this is our introduction to algebra and also equations here. And we've also got some, any item that's printed blue is a glossary term. And we've also got something called mental skills, because it's important that students don't always grab the calculator straight away and be able to do some calculations mentally. So these are some tricks for multiplying by 9, 11, and 12, which they would have learnt in primary school as well. So to multiply by 9, you can just multiply by 10 and then take 1 away. Okay, these are investigations. So this is not something you often see in a maths textbook, but we try to have a lot of classroom activities to give teachers ideas of things that they can do. So I've put 2 there. One is looking at the First Nations seasonal calendar, because Australia has a lot of diverse First Nations, and depending on what area of Australia or what area of the state they're from, they have a different climate, I suppose, so they have different seasons. And this is an investigation on looking at the seasons, and it's in our rates, ratios, and time chapter. And then we've also got an investigation about how much student space is available in a classroom. So, and that's in year 7, looking at the concept of a square meter, and in a classroom, how many square meters per student is there? And we've even made it more relevant by comparing it to, the COVID pandemic is now part of history, but back in 2020, people were allocated an area of 4 square meters as a restriction. So how many students would fit inside your classroom? We've also included things on technology and also interesting facts like what the word Google means and how in maths, and how it compares to Google, the website. And then, like I said, at the end of each chapter, we've got Power Plus, which is an extension exercise. And we've also got extension work, like I said before, such as multiplying integers, and also extension work that's not in the curriculum, but Roman numerals. There was a time when we used to teach this, but we don't teach this anymore. But if the class or the teacher is interested, they can teach Roman numerals. And so these extension have these special markers in the margins. At the end of each chapter, we've got a language exercise, because literacy is just as important as numeracy. So we look at the keywords, the terminology of the chapter. And we also have a topic summary exercise where they summarize the topic using a mind map. And then we've got an end of chapter review exercise, as well as practice sets of mixed revision after every 3 chapters. Okay, again, with the literacy, at the front of the book, we've got mathematical verbs, a glossary, and then at the back of the book, we've got the whole glossary for the whole book, including an index. We also have a new online learning space called Mindtap, which includes all these extra resources. Some are print, some are video. So, and we've also got the ebook there. We've got video tutorials. We've got something called Twig videos, which are 5-minute documentaries showing the background or context of maths. We've got Do the Maths animations on problem solving and explaining real life applications of maths. We've got online quizzes of the word bank, skill check, mental skills, language of maths, and test yourself. We've got something called PhET interactives, which are online simulations for students to manipulate. And then we've got the usual print worksheets and so on. This is what Nelson Mindtap looks like. So there's chapter 5. And then when you go into one of the sections, it shows you all the resources that are linked to that section. So this is 509 to do with dividing terms. So you've got a video, you've got a worksheet, you've got an interactive application there. So you've got these online quizzes like this. and also true-false questions like this, which students can do online, and also matching up words with their definitions. And also these puzzle sheets and skill sheets. We've got these video tutorials. So some of the examples from the textbook are explained by a teacher, flipped classroom teacher, and they also come with closed captions. And then this is a twig video on the lifespan of this little mouse-like animal called an elephant shrew. And we've also got these interactive simulations, so where students can manipulate things to reinforce their learning. For teachers, we've got on Mindtap topic tests and a teaching plan and work solutions to every question, but they can be switched on for students as well. There's an example of a topic test. And mathematics, we've tried to aim to present it in an engaging way using the latest research into learning and also clear language. So we've chunked and decluttered the content, just like with the Australian curriculum, so that it's fresh and uncomplicated. We've tried to focus on core maths concepts and skills with appropriate reading levels. We've written it in the spirit of the curriculum, and we've included numeracy and literacy there, and also interactivity. Okay, now I'm going to hand over to Amanda Cunnington from our sales team, and she will talk to you a bit more about Nelson Mindtap.
Hi, everyone. Next slide, Robert. Thanks. So yes, I'm going to talk to you today a little bit more about Nelson Mindtap. If you want to take me to the next slide, please. As you can see from our infinity diagram, Nelson Mindtap is an online learning space that puts you, the teacher, and the student at the centre. Nelson Mindtap is flexible, tailored learning experience for both students and teachers. The content includes an immersive and interactive e-text enriched with multimedia activities and a variety of assessment. We hope that this brings you and your students an engaging learning experience that can be accessed anytime, anywhere. Next slide. Nelson Maths Years 7 to 10 is a new series for the Australian Curriculum version 9. Nelson Mindtap assists by offering a unique learning stages packed with extra support and answers. Next slide. Course customization. Nelson Mindtap allows course customization where you can create your own course based on school topic selection, the sequence and priorities within your school. You can customize how you would like to teach the course. As a teacher, you can customize the course by changing the sequence of the modular segments. You have the ability to hide content or bring in your own content via a link and teach and unhide your content when you're ready to teach it. As you go through and do this, you can then also publish your content for your students. Next slide. As you can see, and Robert has already mentioned, there is a wealth of material on Nelson Mindtap for students and teachers, from quizzes to skill checks, worksheets, interactives. All of this is designed to engage your students and save you, the teacher, time in preparation. Next slide. We also have included the curriculum-aligned twig videos and animations that are guaranteed to captivate your students and provide real-world context and assess students' understanding. We also have the read speaker functionality, which assists with speech technology. So students can, from differing levels, will be able to have the text read to them. Next slide. Another really powerful part of Nelson Mindtap is Teacher Gradebook, with real-time usage and analytics available. We offer pre and post section quizzes that provide formative assessment opportunities for you to assign to your students as classwork or even as homework. You can differentiate your instruction by creating groups and assign to either a whole class, a group of students, or an individual student. As a teacher, you have full admin rights to your class and you can easily create and edit your groups. You can merge Nelson Mindtap content and assessment to your school's LMS for a simple single sign-on experience. Next slide. So these are our beautiful covers that you can see for years 7 to 10, and our advanced books are the darker colours. Next slide. So price and availability. So in 2022, we will be bringing out years 7, 8 and 9. They are available as a printed book with Nelson Mindtap access, or as a digital only access, no printed book. We will have all of the printed books out by December of 2022. And obviously in 2023, we will be bringing out our year 9 advanced, year 10 and 10 advanced. Will hopefully be out in May. Access to the Nelson Mindtap courseware for teachers is complimentary when a school purchases print or digital. As a class set, a book list, the text is their core text in the subject. For the teacher, when you adopt the course, we work with you to set up the course, and then you can invite your students to the course with a course key, making it easy to access. We offer full teacher training, and we'd be only too happy to arrange this well before the printed books are due for schools that are adopting. We currently offer a 30-day trial for Nelson Mindtap for Nelson Maths, and if you'd like to access that, please feel free to contact us at oz.secondary@cengage.com if you need any uncorrected page proofs, or if you'd like a demo from one of our learning consultants, also please reach out. So that's about all for us today, but we've got some time for questions, so I'll hand over to the rest of the panel. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Amanda. Yeah, I can just see 3 questions, and I think we've answered most of them. One of the questions is, are there videos for all the worked examples in the book? No, the answer is no, but there's a lot of videos for a lot of the worked examples. That's all I can say, probably more than half. But no, we haven't done one for every worked example. Is there a example scope and sequence to accompany the text? We've got the teaching plan. Also, any example assessments. We've got topic tests. I think that's about that's the closest thing we have to that. So yeah, if there's any more questions, then please type them up. Rashmi, do you have anything to add?
No, just that, yeah, it's a great series. There's heaps and heaps of resources available on the Mindtap program. They do take advantage of that trial offer and get in touch with Amanda.
Okay, thanks. And I noticed that Jess has also put up a link in the chat box that where you can request a Nelson Mindtap trial. And then also up on the screen, I've left my email address in case you want to ask me any more questions. There's also the Cengage website where you can learn more about Nelson Maths Queensland. It has its own page, so there's that link there. And as we said at the beginning of this presentation, we are recording this, and you will have access to this recording as well as these slides in about a week's time. So I'm just going to hand back to Jess now.
Okay, it doesn't seem like there's any more questions. So we'd just like to say a big thank you to everyone who's joined us this evening, and an extra big thank you to our panelists for all their sharing their knowledge and taking the time. And we hope you'll have a lovely evening, and please reach out to us about Nelson Maths when you get a chance. Thank you. Good night.